The problem with assuming that everyone can understand what you are saying is that often many won't be able to. Whether it's their understanding of the language you're using, whether they can hear or see, or even if you're able to connect and engage with them as an audience member. We cannot assume that everyone will be able to absorb the messages we are delivering. Did you know that over 5% of the world's population, over 400 million people, require some kind of rehabilitation to address their disabling hearing loss? It is estimated that by 2050, over 700 million people, or 1 in every 10 people, will have disabling hearing loss. And disabling hearing loss refers to any hearing loss that's greater than 35 decibels of hearing in the best ear. The prevalence of hearing loss increases with age, and among those who are older than 60, over 25% are affected by this disabling hearing loss. So greetings, fellow speakers. As we gather, let us turn our gaze towards an aspect of communication we often overlook. Who are those we have not thought of? Those in the periphery of our audience scope who silently yearn for inclusion. Today, I invite you to join me in uncovering the unheard and the unseen, in ensuring that our messages reach and resonate with every soul in the room. This is my call to you to elevate our craft of speaking to new heights of inclusivity and awareness. In the pursuit of powerful presentations, we design our talks with the average listener in our heads. However, this average is a myth, an oversimplification of the beautiful tapestry of human diversity. For instance, could a person with hearing impairment delight in the nuances of your spoken poetry? How about the neurodiverse individual for whom metaphorical language can blur rather than clarify? To illustrate, let me share a quick story. Recently, I spoke at a conference, and despite my best intentions, I learned that a colorblind member of the audience could not differentiate between the red and green charts in my presentation. This oversight taught me a vital lesson about sensory inclusion. Now ask yourself, are my visual aids comprehensible to all? Are there sign language interpreters or closed captions available for my speech? These are the first steps to dismantling unseen barriers. Now let's consider neurodiversity. Neurodiversity refers to the diverse ways in which our brains operate and interpret information. It's an essential factor to consider when speaking to an audience because it affects engagement, information retention, and overall experience. Think about it. The pace and intensity of a presentation can have varying effects on individuals. Some in your audience may thrive on the buzz of a fast-paced delivery, finding it engaging and motivating. However, for others who process information differently, such as those with ADHD or autism, the same pace could be just overwhelming, leading to disconnection and a loss of focus. Addressing this spectrum isn't just about pacing, it's about the modality of your presentation. For example, incorporating visual aids can be helpful. Have you considered using them in a way that's not solely reliant on color differentiation? Providing alternatives or explanations for those with color vision deficiency ensures you're not inadvertently excluding parts of your audience. Taking brief pauses allows attendees to process and reflect on the information you've delivered. But these moments of silence are not voids, but opportunities for deeper comprehension and engagement. Likewise, providing written summaries or handouts can be invaluable. They serve as tangible references that attendees can revisit, ensuring that the key points resonate and are retained long after your talk concludes. Content warnings are also crucial when covering sensitive topics. They're not a sign of censorship, but courtesy that allows people to prepare for or opt out of potentially triggering content. It demonstrates respect and consideration for the well-being of your audience. Beyond neurodiversity, we must also navigate the complex terrain of cross-cultural communication. The richness of global cultures means that a story or a joke that works well in one cultural context may not translate effectively into another. Language is nuanced, and humour even more so. It's subtleties that can be lost or misinterpreted when removed from their cultural context. So when preparing context and content for diverse audiences, it's vital to remove local slang and idioms, or at the very least explain them. By doing so, you're creating an inclusive narrative that's more likely to resonate across different cultures. Consider using stories with universal themes or analogies that transcend cultural barriers. It's about finding that common ground that connects us all, regardless of where we come from. When addressing neurodiversity and cultural differences, it requires mindfulness and a willingness to adapt. It's about ensuring that our communication is not only heard, but also understood and appreciated by everyone in our audience, thus creating a truly inclusive experience. So how do we craft content that truly speaks to everybody? Allow me to share some practical advice. Firstly, gender identity. By using inclusive language such as everyone instead of ladies and gentlemen, and by honouring personal pronouns, we create a welcoming space for all gender identities. It's a simple change, but yet has a profound impact. Sensory inclusion can be addressed by ensuring our visual materials are described audibly. This aid not only helps the visually impaired, but also who process information better through auditory means. For the neurodiverse, try to structure your talk with clear, logical progression and provide summaries at each major point. This aids in comprehension and retention for all, especially for those with attention or processing differences. And lastly, know your audience. Research the demographic of your attendees and adapt your speech to cater to a wider cultural palette. This might mean adjusting your examples to be more globally relevant or learning about communication norms in various cultures. So, fellow speakers, the challenge before us is not to merely communicate, but to connect, to ensure that our words do not echo in empty spaces, but find their home in every listener's understanding. As we part ways today, I implore you to revisit your materials, to infuse each word with the spirit of inclusivity. Together, let's make our stages a place of belonging for us all. I invite you to join me in a pledge to review our upcoming talks with an inclusive lens, to seek feedback from diverse audiences, and to share our learnings with one another. Connect with me on LinkedIn where we can continue this conversation. Let's shape the future of speaking, one inclusive word at a time. Thank you for your time, your open hearts, and your commitment to inclusivity.